Tales of the Caballos by William H. White. Part 4, Chapter 3, The Caballo Cave. The Caballo Cave is located about 1 mile south of Palomas Gap at the end of the old Spanish road. From this road's end, there is a trail up the wash and over the top of the adjoining wash to where the cave actually lies. This is a story of a trip made into the bowels of this cave by 4 senior citizens with the hopes of finding a way into the heart of the mountain. Ralph Wallach, Jim Knighty, Louis Jameson, and I all met for breakfast the morning of our planned departure into this cave. Of all of us, only Louis Jameson had experience with this cave, and of the 4 of us, Jim Knighty and myself were the 2 most experienced rock climbers. Ralph Wallach was the least experienced, but made up the difference in enthusiasm. It was an adventure that all of us had looked forward to in the days of planning preceding this event. Because of the amount of gear we were planning to carry into the cave, we needed 2 vehicles to get us to the trailhead. It was 10 o'clock in the morning when we finally started up the trail. The packs carried food and water for 3 days, plus many supplies we would all need while in the cave. The average pack weighed around 50 pounds. This seemed more like 100 pounds as the trail steepened. The climb was uneventful, which means nothing bad happened. At one point, the trail becomes so steep there's nothing but rock to walk up. The angle of the ascent is low enough to allow walking with feet while hands are placed on the rock above. If it was any steeper, we would have needed safety ropes. We peaked the top and completed a short walk around the mountain to the mouth of the cave. It was time to rest and regain our lost electrolytes before descending into the dark hole below us. Louis Jameson happily informed us that we had made the climb almost 20 minutes earlier than the average person, a small victory for those of us over 50. The mouth of the cave had bars over the entrance and the usual BLM disclaimers and warnings. At one time, the entrance was locked, but the locks were always cut by the spelunkers coming here. The government finally decided to give up replacing them. We quickly moved into the mouth of the cave and adjusted our equipment for the trek into the mountain. Louis Jameson led the way because he had been here before. The main room is quite large and slopes downward in a northeastern direction for about 3,000 yards until abruptly terminating with truck-sized boulders. The walking becomes extremely dangerous from this point on before reaching our descension hole. Here again, the BLM graciously left a sign telling us to proceed no further. It was very kind of them to mark the hole for us and eliminated the search time on our part in finding it. We were certainly not the first ones into the cave, but as we descended into the mountain deeper and deeper, fewer and fewer graffiti signs marked the walls. We were getting to the point that separates the men from the boys in the cave exploring, and we all knew it. Typically, we would descend into a level, then pass the backpacks down on ropes to the level below. After all were accounted for, we would begin a search of the surrounding caves, looking for a passage that penetrated ever downward. We had been climbing steadily for about 6 hours when we finally stymied. The passage was simply too small to continue. On a positive note, we were able to actually see the floor on the main cave below us from about 30 feet up, but no one was successful in finding a way down to it. It was reluctantly decided by all of us to turn around and begin our ascent out of this cave. Moving upward was just as arduous as descending. One person had to go up and station themselves at the point where he could lift the backpacks and place them out of the way so the other 3 could join him. This pattern was repeated time and time again until we finally emerged at the main room. It was now 10:30 at night. We had been steadily climbing for over 10 hours, but it didn't seem near that long to any of us. We had all lost serious body fluids during the climb, and we needed to refresh ourselves and get some rest. Jim Knighty found a relatively flat area close to the surface, and we soon began to unwind and try to get some sleep. We were all exhausted but still wired by the excitement of the adventure. It was several hours until all of us could actually begin to drift off to sleep. I always pack a gun when on the mountain, and this was no exception. It was safely stashed within easy reach. Lewis Jameson was also armed in like manner. I was just about ready to fall asleep when I heard footfalls. Someone was in the cave with us. Needless to say, both Lewis and I went ballistic immediately with our flashlights and guns in hand. There was no one there. After a thorough search, nothing moved inside the cave. Both of us agreed that what we actually heard were footfalls. This mystery had no apparent explanation. We finally settled down and tried to drift off to sleep once more. Later that night, with both Ralph Wallach and Jim Knighty sound asleep, we had a parade. It lasted for over 10 minutes, and there were big ones and small ones crunching along on the cave gravels below. Both Lewis Jameson and I laid there fully awake and calmly listened to this without responding. The next morning, we talked about this and both agreed that whatever it was, we had both felt safe and that there was no cause for alarm. That same morning, Lewis Jameson suggested that we had all been visited by Bigfoot the night before. This would also explain the horrid smell both of us noticed during the night. Why we couldn't see them is a mystery to me, as well as why I allowed the intruders to march by my sleeping place without becoming alarmed. I would recommend that the reader find some books on the mysterious Sasquatch that may explain some of this phenomenon. I just don't know. The next morning, we all quickly scrambled through the bars and made our descent down the trail below. Within an hour, we were down and had to wait for our ride back to town. We were tired, but it had been a rewarding experience for all of us. Although we had not located an entrance into the mountain, we had all profited immensely by the attempt. I would recommend this cave to any experienced spelunker. It is well worth the effort expended to get there. The end. Up next is Part 4, Chapter 4, Carlotta's Crown.